Hello, good afternoon, and welcome back to Therapy Pages podcast. So
Hello.
we were just saying how today is our episode number 13, and today is Friday the 13th. So,
Ooh, and we're reading this book that has like curses
yeah,
and things.
curses. Yes, interesting. So we'll see how this goes.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if it's going to
So,
be glitchy.
yeah, let's hope not. But how exciting, episode 13. I can't believe that's where we are. So.
And I know. And we're on more platforms.
We are, yes. So we're on Substack, we're on Apple.
Mm-hmm. Some of them, they're not all loaded up yet. Yep.
We're getting
Substack,
there.
Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, which also is a little bit behind on the upload. So we got to, um, get all of those automated and it will be fine. It's going to be
We'll get
fine.
We'll get there. It is going to be fine. That's all we keep saying. It's going to be fine. So,
Yes.
yeah, we also
So
we
the
also
book.
took a little bit of a turn this episode
Mhm.
too. We're trying some new and different things. So, give us your feedback on your thoughts. So, we wanted to read maybe some different books, and this book definitely has a lot of mental health themes in it, even though it's not technically considered like a therapy or self-help book. But there's so many themes that we're excited to talk about.
Yeah. And it's been on the New York Times bestseller
Yes,
list. I don't know if it still is, but it came out in 2007. So,
right.
it's been out for a while and it's apparently been on a lot of AP reading lists in high schools, which is
Yeah.
where I found that there was an article about the banned book and it was uh, where was the high school? Was it in, where was
It's
it?
in New Jersey,
Yeah.
a high school in New Jersey. Yeah. So that was kind of a part of the reason why we picked this book is because there was a high school in New Jersey. I forget the name of it, but they were struggling with some things going on in their school, and they decided to ban this book. So that's why we kind of picked this. We want to maybe do some more books that are banned and just talk about them because a lot of times some of them are, as this book, banned for mental health reasons,
Hmm.
or maybe sometimes they're banned for just talking about violence or even trauma or things like that. So,
Right.
so
And instead of banning them, giving them voice and talking about the issues rather than just, because,
yes,
banning a book without talking about it, it doesn't make any sense. And to me, it makes people, I know if I were a teenager, I'm like, oh, I want to know what that book's about. Like, I'm going to go read that book. So
yes,
I think that was another, impetus for us to open up the conversation. Right. So,
absolutely, yeah, and we'll talk about that more as we get into it as well, and just ideas on banned books. But before we start, just a few disclaimers. So this book and we are also going to be talking about themes in the book. So some of the themes can be triggering. So, trigger warning. If this is something that you struggle with, please do not watch this video. Take time for yourself. We are going to be talking about some violence that was in the book and also suicide. So, um, if you're having any thoughts or need a crisis line, 988 is a really great number to call. Very
hmm
helpful. I've had
hmm
clients use it and they're very helpful. So, um, yeah. So, and again, take care of yourself. If you feel like that's not something that you want to hear, please feel free
hmm
just to skip this video. So that's one disclaimer. Another is that we really want you and think it's really helpful to read this book. So we're going to try to not have any spoiler alerts, at
mm,
least for now. That might change towards the end of the video. We'll let you know beforehand, but going
yeah.
to try not to really give away too much about what happened in the book. So.
Yeah, because this is a very different, like the other books that we've read have been like informational books and things like that.
Yeah.
This is a novel, so it's very different, and we don't want to ruin it for you if you have not read it. So yeah.
Yes, and anyone is welcome if you've never heard of the book or haven't read it, or if you read the whole thing and you want to hear our take on it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we're at. So our book is that we're doing today, the Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde by Junot Díaz. So that's the book we're going to talk about today.
There you go.
Um, And yeah, so this book is about a family from the Dominican Republic, and it goes through many timelines, which was a little bit confusing. We can talk about that too, but for me at least, it was confusing because it was started in like the 50s, I think, right? Like 50s, 60s, and then kind of jumped into like 70s, 80s, which was more, I think, like kind of more present day of what the book was
Mm-hmm.
about then. So it follows a family, starts with grandparents, a mom, and then kids, the two kids.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those kids was Oscar, who I think was around 7 when the book started.
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was pretty young. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and there was some back and forth. I think the author tried to like open the segments with the timeline so that you could follow it, but if you got into it, the some of the experiences of the different generations were so similar. I know for me, I'm like, wait, who is this? Is this, you know, Bali, or is this, somebody else? So some of that was, but once I got into it, I think it was easier, and listening to it was different for me than reading it. I found I was able to kind of stay focused more when I was reading it than listening. So yeah. But that timeline, that back and forth, I think is really important also for character development. So if you can
yeah.
follow it, and I went back and read some parts over again, just to, okay, what did I miss here? So I think it is important for the development of some of the themes that we're going to talk about, like intergenerational trauma and or cultural ideas about what that is, like, is it a curse? So yeah.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of mental health themes. So that's kind
Mm-hmm.
of where we're going to be coming from. Obviously, is talking more about the mental health themes. But yeah, we both talked about, Dory and I both talked about how it was much easier to read it, and I know other
Mm-hmm.
times it was easier for me to listen to our book. So I'm not sure either what the difference is. I think it was a bit confusing when I was just listening to the audiobook, but when I was able to read it is when I started to really get into it. And then once I started reading it, I didn't want to stop reading it. So
Right.
um,
Yep.
I would
Yeah.
definitely say, like, it's my, I guess, description of it is it's just like beautiful and tragic at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's all told through an observer of the family who isn't even necessarily a part of the family. So he's a
Right.
friend of Oscar's sister, right? So
Yeah, so
um,
they dated. He I think my opinion I think is that he was in love with her, or always was
yeah,
in love with her.
yeah.
Had kind of, I think, a brief relationship, but yes, and also kind of became friends with Oscar mostly because of his sister wanting them to become friends. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so he was the
Yeah,
narrator.
yeah, yeah. And didn't he call himself the watcher, or as the teller? I guess. Well, we'll get into that. That's with the idea of the curse and everything. So yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I mean,
Yeah.
it was an interesting perspective to somebody from outside of the family to kind of be telling this story. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, so we might as well get into that. One of the biggest themes was the idea of a curse. So they call the curse the fukú. So that's a cultural term for curse from the Dominican Republic. And it's so interesting because, yeah, knowing some things that I know about other cultures too. I know the Puerto Rican culture also sometimes has that idea of having a curse. I know, like in Haiti, they have those ideas too. So just that idea of like that you are cursed, and that is because your family is cursed, and it's kind of this like ongoing thing. So I think that was a huge theme for the book. Oscar talked about that curse a lot. So he was very
Mm-hmm.
much stuck in that feeling that there was a curse on his family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it seems like as you're reading it that the curse is what we call in therapy intergenerational trauma, right? And
Yeah.
how it really does affect people across generations, and even genetically, like DNA is altered, and maybe
Yes.
because of the stress, I think, is one of the
Mhm.
theories.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I think that was really helpful to put it in, to like to look at it that way, to say, oh, and for me reading it now, as an adult, and this many years in practice, like, oh, this really does make sense for cultures who didn't, and still, even like whether it's superstition or whatever it is, it didn't really have a name for this. This is what it is, and so these beliefs, the fukú and then the zafa, which is the, I guess, like an action to take away the curse,
Yes.
which is this
The
book.
counter curse. Yes. Yes.
I think it really it made a lot of sense, and it hit home, I think, for like what I've seen different people and books that we've read about the Holocaust or other things, or who have gone through significant trauma or violence. So
Yes, absolutely. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head talking about the kind of the counter curse, which is this book, which I think the metaphor for that is being able to talk about that trauma. So there's so much, I think, just in the book. What happens is there's a whole section on Oscar's mom, who's Belly in the book, Belicia, I believe is her name, and there's a whole section on her and all of the awful traumatic things that she experienced, and she never told him about it, as far as we know. She never talked to either her son or her daughter about what had happened to her. So it was kind of like this secret. And I feel like the way to kind of counteract some of that a little bit is to be open about that and to talk about that. And it's so funny because as a therapist, I just saw the new Scream 7, which I love all the Scream movies. So, but it's so interesting because as sitting there watching it, and I'm like, oh wow, this is definitely some generational trauma because it's with Sydney's daughter in the movie, if you've ever seen them, and she doesn't want to talk about what happened to her. So her daughter is just kind of like left in the dark and doesn't know anything, really that happened, and it actually was like a detriment to her. Again, won't give any spoilers, but it really reminded me of this book too, of how that idea of how we just keep things such a secret.
Yeah, and as you're saying that reminds me of our last book, The Gift. Because remember, she did not talk about it for years until her daughter was in middle school, I think, doing a project on the Holocaust. So yes, I think it really is. I mean, you can see how holding the secret or the curse, it can be so detrimental. And when we shine the light, and and this is something that we talk about in therapy, right? So when people come in, they don't want to talk about their trauma or admit to it. There's shame, there's guilt, there's other things involved, when there does, it was not their fault. It was, but they're holding this burden. So I think, yes, this was a really good metaphor for what happens when or what you can do when you shine the light on things.
Yeah, absolutely. And just how, what happened to Belly, how that affected her as a mom. And she, I think throughout some of the book was kind of very, very distant, and just kind of zoned out, to the point that Lola, Oscar's sister, I think was kind of like almost like parentified as a child, and almost became like more of a mother figure to Oscar. But yeah, it's such a great point just about that. And we could talk about generational trauma for hours, probably.
I know, right? Yeah.
But it is so interesting that, there's actual biological changes, which is just crazy of a concept. But
yeah, but now that they know that, it really does validate these people's, experience. So people who have dealt with it. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. Yeah, and I think with the way this story, the family started, they were living in a dictatorship, right? So it was terrifying.
Yes, and the dictatorship almost just became, it wasn't just, like this one person, it was like became the curse as well. So I thought that was really interesting too.
Yeah. Because he was a terrible person. And an interesting side note, if you it is also in the audio version that I had, but in the book, there's a lot of history that I didn't know about. So
yes, oh my gosh, I learned so much history, and I'm not a history person, but it was really interesting. I had no idea, what was going on in the Dominican Republic in the 50s. So they were under an awful dictatorship, and in the book there's all these footnotes that you can go through. I think I could probably read this book like 3 or 4 times and still not pick up on all of the layers of it.
I totally agree with that. Yeah. Which is why I think I kept going back. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Wait, did I miss something? I definitely think this is a book to read more than once, and maybe I will, but not right now.
Yeah.
I guess it's also
Agreed.
such a heavy book. I mean, I do think it's an important read, and I think it can really open up communication about hard subjects, which is what hopefully we're doing today. But it is really heavy. So,
It is, yes. And so, and we always talk about who we would recommend it to. So definitely, this is not one that we would say recommend to anyone across the board because
right.
yeah, it is heavy and there are some hard topics.
Yeah. Yeah. And on the flip side of that, people who are in the process of healing from maybe similar things or that you really feel can connect with, this might be an empowering book for them.
Yeah.
So, but it is sensitive to like I would be cautious with the recommendations, that's for sure. Because
Yeah.
it can be triggering, like you said at the beginning of today's episode. Like it really can, and we
Yeah.
don't want people to be triggered without having the necessary and appropriate resources and skills to deal with that.
Absolutely, yes.
So,
So if you have those resources, you're in therapy, maybe
mhm.
you're in a good place, I would 100% recommend this book. But
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so you had mentioned Lola being parentified,
yes,
taking care of her mom. I think that, like in the as we're talking about the dictatorship and all of that, it seems like Lola really was there for Oscar, like
yes,
more than mom was almost, right? Like
yes,
mom
yes.
was just not emotionally available at all.
Yes, exactly. And so yeah, the reason why I think Junior was the one who did the narration is because he was very close to the situation in Oscar
Mm.
because Lola kept kind of really encouraging him to check on him, and she kept saying, spend time with him and check on him to the point where she even asked him to be his roommate in
Mm-hmm.
college. And he wasn't thrilled with that at times, and they even got into him and Oscar got into a big fight. But yeah, so she was definitely the one. It seemed to be always checking up on him.
Yeah, yeah, and I think with that, I mean, I think that Oscar was always, I mean, I don't know how, like you could tell that Oscar was not your average kid, right? So
Yes,
he
yes.
definitely, like he had two friends when he was younger.
Mhm.
I mean, I question if maybe he was on the spectrum. I don't know.
Yeah.
He had special interests. His social skills were zero.
Mhm.
He really didn't pick up on social cues. So I wonder if that's a part of the story without really being named, and with that, him feeling, I guess, I don't know if it's different or,
Mhm.
but kind of feeling like an outsider.
Yeah, I think he did feel like an outsider, in a lot of ways, and he definitely, according to Junior, or Junior was he was an outsider because like he also did not at all have I guess kind of like that cultural um background either, that he was just kind of this different kid. So right, he was very into like sci-fi. Um,
Mm-hmm.
he was very into like a specific movie that he would watch all of the time. He was very into Stephen King. He really loved to write a lot. So he was
Mm-hmm.
very different. Wasn't They talked about him not being very like masculine, or as
Mm-hmm.
like Dominican men would appear masculine, at that time.
Yeah.
So I
Which I
wonder
think
too. Yeah.
furthered his, kind of otherness, feeling othered.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And and I think his sadness and, the clearly depression also, right? So I
Yes.
think,
Mm-hmm.
again, without being named, because it's not masculine, that's not something that they, I mean, they you don't go to a therapist, you're a strong,
Yeah.
Dominican man, and you don't, that's just not okay. So I think he always felt really different. So, I wonder, is that, like, when we talk about banned books and, the damage, would this be something that could speak to, you know, Latino teens, in
Yeah.
feeling different and,
Mm-hmm.
what that experience is like. Not that they're like Oscar necessarily, but I think
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to have all the other things going on that Oscar had to feel that, with this cultural
Absolutely. Yeah.
push to be this big tough guy.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. And I really liked that Oscar lived in New Jersey, but he also went back to the Dominican Republic, a couple of times too. So that was, I think, a big part of the book too. And so did Lola. And she also ended up in, was it France too? Like she traveled.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that part of the book too, because it also brings really in that cultural aspect. And
Mm-hmm.
like you said, how people see depression. I've had clients from, yeah, definitely Dominican Republic that have said, yeah, like I've had depression and, my grandmother told me like there was a curse on me or there was, like
Yeah.
something attached to me that caused it. So that is definitely a cultural belief. And I think even just reading about that and hearing that other people have experienced that helps you to not feel as alone.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this book, if instead of banning it, being able to talk about it and say, hey,
Yes.
if you can relate to Oscar, if you felt that way, there's help. Like you don't need to
Yeah.
carry all of this. You can go get help. And this is actually a thing. It's called depression, or it's called trauma, or it's called, like it, giving it a name and showing people, particularly teens, because I think that's a really difficult time of life anyway, right? So showing people that
Yes.
you can get help. There's help available. So yeah, I think that would be much more productive than banning the book.
100%. And I think that is why. So I was reading about this more and more because I was really curious as because there's also a lot of there's a lot of swearing and there's a lot of violence. There's physical violence, there's sexual
Mm-hmm.
violence. So I was
Mm-hmm.
wondering what the reason why the book was banned. But so the article I read, which I believe was NPR, said that it was banned because in this particular school they had recently two suicides.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't say necessarily banned, didn't use that word, but
Right.
it
Yeah,
was,
that's
yes,
right. It
taken
was
out of the
suspended,
curriculum,
right?
suspended,
So
right?
yeah,
Taken out
it
of the
was.
curriculum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So whatever that means, so the teachers were no longer allowed to teach it. I think that you were at some point, I don't know if that's still possible, but able to get your parents to like sign a permission slip that you could read it.
Yeah.
But what I thought
And
was
it
so
was,
interesting, and I sent you the article, is that the kids from this high school wrote a letter, like all collectively, of how important they thought this book was to them and that they wanted to have access
mm-hmm.
to this book. So that just says so much in itself.
It really does. Yeah. And, they said in that article that the book was still available in the library for people to check out, but it
Yeah.
wasn't going to be studied in AP, um, I guess, language
This
arts,
yeah.
this year or whatever. But so there were two suicides. The book has been taught almost since it came out.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm not sure. I mean, I understand being, like looking at what are we doing, but I don't know how the two can be related.
Right. And I think that, if you've had two suicides in your school, like those are signs that you need more therapy, you need more communication, you need more openness,
Mm-hmm.
I think like getting everyone involved, community,
Yeah.
parents, teachers, counselors, and how do you talk about this? Because just saying like we're just not going to teach this book anymore is not an effective way to deal with.
Yeah, just putting your head in the sand. It's like
Yeah.
if this book gives the opportunity to, have a conversation about really difficult topics, which I think it does, why not, use it and maybe add a segment to the lesson plan of this book, right? So
Yes.
maybe have kids do research on mental health availability in their community or what their experience, you know what I mean? Like maybe
Right.
open that up a little bit more rather than just say, nope, we're not going to read this. Like that's going to make a difference. Plus, teenagers are going to read it. If it's banned, they're going to say, oh, I want to read that book. That's like
Yes.
just as we
That's
were
very
saying
true.
before we got on. If that were me, I'd be like,
Mhm.
I'm reading that book. So
Right. Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's one, I think, way that they kind of dropped the ball by banning this book.
I think so too. And I'm just thinking like that whole metaphor, it's almost taking away that counter curse, and
Right.
giving them the opportunity to tell their story or, to connect with other people who have experienced similar things. So,
Yeah. 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 So talking about depression, giving it a name, I think is really helpful. Yeah.
yeah. Yes, and letting people know that's something that you can experience and it's okay, and what do you do with that instead of avoiding.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and you had mentioned, Lola being what we call now maybe parentified, and escaping. So I think what she experienced was burnout, like it really
Yeah.
was, and
Mhm.
she left. Well, we shouldn't
Yeah.
give away. Sorry. Okay. Sort of spoiler, but not really. But I think she had to do what she had to do to find herself. And then there's that
Yeah.
whole, you know, um, issue that she struggled with, like, leaving Oscar there as us, checking on him. And so, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I really I think probably she was one of my favorite characters in the book. Um
Hmm.
Lola, his sister, besides Oscar, of course, but I
Right, right.
liked her character.
Yeah, I liked her too. And I liked that she was, angry. And I think a lot of what she exhibited was very normal and very healthy, teenage to young adult rebellion. It really
Mhm.
was. And I think
Yes.
we don't look at that in, as much, and respect it as much. I mean, truly, that's kind of your role in that stage of development. Right?
Yeah.
To
Mhm.
rebel, to get
Mhm.
away, to,
Mhm.
understand who you are without all of these pressures from, your family of origin.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and she even went to stay with big part we're missing out too is La Inca, so with her grandmother who was
Mm-hmm.
Belly's like I guess kid stepmom, I think kind of was what her name would be.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think she wasn't her biological mother, but she was kind of almost kind of like the patriarch of the family too, who was kind of trying to keep everybody together, um, and would kind of give people advice and things like that. So
Mm-hmm. And keep them away from the fukú,
yes, from the curse.
or
Yes,
safe
yeah,
from the fukú,
yes, yes.
right? So,
And she had lived through the whole dictatorship, even before
mm,
that too. So yeah,
mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
devastating. Yeah. So, what did you think about Oscar's obsession with love and what his thoughts were about that?
Yeah, I mean that was a theme, right? Throughout,
Yes.
as soon as
Mhm.
he hit puberty, pretty much, that
Mhm.
neighborhood, which is one of the things that made me kind of reflect, because I have several neurodivergent clients, and it kind of made me reflect on that, like, oh, that, I wonder if that's at play here, because he didn't
Yeah.
read. I mean, yes, there was the love obsession, but he also did not read social cues at all. you know
Right. Yeah.
and he was really focused on this, and and there's several, the theme repeats a couple of
Mhm.
times,
Yeah.
right? At
I think
least
three, at least
twice.
three. I think three. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it definitely, where he kind of, oh right, yeah, he latched on to someone, and he was in love like within a
Yeah.
day, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then doing everything and putting himself kind of maybe even at risk, definitely at risk at some points. But yeah, I
Yeah.
thought it was a good portrayal, though. I really did. I thought it seemed fairly accurate to how, I've seen people be in relationships. But what, like, so then the other question is, you know, what is he seeking? Does he need, like, does this make him feel better? But how could it make him feel better when it was unrequited love? You know what I mean? I don't know. So
Yeah, it
what
seems
did
like he
you?
wasn't getting much back in return from that love,
Mm-mm.
but I think also just that idea that he could be in love, because he was, I think, almost taught that like this is what you should do.
Yeah.
That was very important in his culture was to meet someone and be in a relationship. So,
Yeah. And is he worthy of love? Is he, I
yes,
think that's something that you really see throughout. Like, that's a theme throughout this. Like, is he lovable? Is he, he talked to Junior about his virginity, and the
yes,
Dominican man. What was it? If they can't die a virgin or something.
right,
So,
yes, all of yeah, which is really interesting too. Yeah.
hmm,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I'm just thinking of a a therapy lens too. You had mentioned maybe he was autistic, and that could definitely be a possibility. I think also sounds like there's some depression. But my
Mm-hmm.
thought also is, was he just like looking for, yeah, like this kind of like constant wanting or needing to be loved by someone because his mom was so closed off because of all of the trauma that she had experienced. So kind of still goes
Mm-hmm.
back to that idea of generational trauma and how that gets passed down not only biologically but in how we treat our family, how we treat the people we love, our kids, our those kinds of things. So
Right. And then attachment, right? So
attachment, yeah.
the whole attachment wounds, that is so much out there right now in the therapy world, like how our early bonding with our parents or our main caregivers is so important on our ability to find worth in ourselves and to exist in the world without having to have someone all the time. So if so I guess that would be a good theme that is represented in this book to talk about, some
Yeah.
attachment theory ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even with Junior, because he was talking about, I don't know if this is a spoiler, I'll try my best not to, but how he loved Lola so much and he wanted to be with
Mm.
her so much, but he was not able to in just so many ways. I think he was almost making it seem that she was the one who didn't want the relationship, but then he was talking about all the things he was doing, and he was the one really who was kind of like impeding in that relationship. So
Yeah,
he
yeah.
had some attachment stuff going on too.
Absolutely. And Oscar and Junior talked about that. I
Yes.
remember Oscar saying, well, why do you do it? And he said, if
Yeah.
I knew that, I will,
Right. Right.
So yeah, that's a really good point. So I do think attachment issues or wounds are a theme throughout the book with probably every main character that we met, I
Yeah.
think,
Mm-hmm.
including the love interests, including like I think throughout the book, there's definitely um, examples of that you could use and talk
Yeah.
about. For like we said before we got on today, this book could, like, you could
Yeah.
break it down into so many different things to talk about. It just is crazy. So I mean, we could
Yeah.
talk about attachment, we could talk about intergenerational trauma, we could talk about depression. There's so many things that
Mm-hmm. Even immigration with everything going on in the world right
mm-hmm,
now too. I mean, it just really made me think, and I do feel that reading this book hopefully will also cause other people to think about that and maybe see things a little
mm-hmm.
bit differently.
Yeah, that's a good point, especially like it is very present, right? So I
Yeah.
think and I thought about that, like some, you know, parallels to today of the immigrant experience and how, and even when they were in um the DR and talking about Haitians or other, like
Yes.
all around, not only when they were in New York and how they were, the discrimination they felt, but
Yes.
also,
Mhm.
so it
Mhm.
was, yeah, definitely was another theme that was carried throughout the book, I think.
I kind of forgot about that. Yeah, when they were in New York and yeah, how the things had changed, right? So I mean, yeah, that's a whole other part of this too. So there's so many great themes.
So many layers.
So many layers. Yes, way too many
Yeah.
to talk about, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll continue our episode at another time too, but
Episode
yeah,
13, part 2.
part two, right? It's possible. There's really so much to
There
talk
is so
about.
much in this book to talk
Mhm.
about, I think, and I think that's important to talk about that we don't talk about, like
Yeah.
the depression, like the differences in people, and even the idea of fukú or curse, being able to, instead of looking at people from other cultures as having these beliefs, looking at like, okay, let me actually take a look at it, instead of just like, oh, that's just that doesn't make any sense, or that's just a superstition or whatever it is.
Right.
Instead, really framing into, well, maybe this is something, maybe this is intergenerational trauma, or mental health concern. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and if you read this book or you didn't, I think maybe something to get out of this is to kind of give yourself some time to maybe write down maybe some
Mm-hmm.
generational trauma you've had in your own family, and especially if it's maybe something that you've heard in passing that you never really got the full story of, or maybe a story from a grandparent or something that you don't really know about, is just to take some time and give yourself time to write that down and process it a little bit and to talk about it more and not avoid it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to even just if you don't think it's trauma, just your family stories, right? So like
Yeah.
family lore that, oh, like my husband's like great grandfather was he he was a bootlegger during Prohibition, right? So those kind of
Oh,
stories, like that's just because as you learn those stories, and so as I say that, it makes me remember that get the stories before the people are gone. So like
yeah.
talk to your
Yeah.
grandparents, talk to your parents, like get those stories. But yeah, like these are things that are in your family's DNA, that like, wow,
Yeah.
this is what made us, who we are. So let's talk about it. Yeah.
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 I think we alluded to the, with that and, with just, I guess, ideas of what you should be, shouldn't be, but alluded to Oscar's struggle, not only with obsession, but his difference, and which is where maybe he's neurodivergent. I don't know. But the idea of the DR masculinity and how that I think affected him, even though he would say that didn't necessarily at times, like he would cry and he would be okay with crying and he would do things, he would express emotions, but I think it's still, there was this message that he got that
Yeah.
it was weakness. It was not okay. Oscar, what are you doing? Don't cry. He'd be made fun of, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I made fun of a lot for his weight too, so then that was also,
Mm-hmm.
I think, something that is, yeah, I mean, culturally in many cultures. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that he can be an example of, that it's okay to talk about things. Like it's important to talk about things. So it's not a
Mhm.
weakness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, just the idea too, if you've never heard of generational trauma or if you don't understand it, this book is, I think, really helpful. And just learning more about that. Just thinking of the idea of like oppressed population and cultures and how that's not just, back then when those things happen.
Oh, yeah,
Those things continue into today. So
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. But also the metaphor of fukú as intergenerational trauma and the zafa as storytelling as the cure, I think is huge because we know in trauma, when we talk about it or when we release it, we don't, I mean, there's a lot of therapies that you don't have to talk about it, but when we release, so whatever that means to whoever the trauma survivor is, that is where the healing happens,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
I think this was the book was obviously the Zafa, right? And
Right. Mhm.
that was the storytelling. That was like, hopefully this is going to break it or whatever. But yeah, I think that that's important that it so these concepts came about for a reason.
Yeah, and they're all really great concepts to learn, which is why I do think it is so important to, include it in curriculum and especially teenagers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having them read that so that they're not feeling so alone and to know that there's so much power in just telling your story and talking about
Mm-hmm.
where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
I saw on our just idea list of this book will make you laugh and break your heart in the same sentence. And I think that is just 100% how I feel about it. Because the author did such a great job. I think he doesn't write like I think like other books that I've read. It's kind of more just like stream of consciousness. So I think like
Yes.
which I really like because it's so real and it's
Mm-hmm.
really funny in some parts of it. And then
Mm-hmm.
other parts is just so heartbreaking. But he even brings humor into really awful things are happening and then brings some humor into it as well. So
He does. He
yeah.
does. Yeah, I would never have picked up this book had it not been for it being a banned book and I
Yeah.
saw the article. Like, I don't know if you would have, but this would not have been on my list, to
No,
read.
definitely not. Yeah. And I'm so
Yeah.
glad that I did read it, and I will read
Yeah.
it again. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll probably read it again also. Just not right now. I need something a little light. Well, actually,
Agreed.
I was looking for other books for us to talk about, and that there were a couple that I saw, but I started after I finished this literally last night, like I all the way through.
Mhm.
Um, and I started already reading Looking for Alaska. So, which
Oh, okay. Which might be our
which
next book. Okay.
I mean, it could be a good, it's about grief and other things. So again, it's a novel. So I wouldn't want, I mean, a lot of people I think have read a lot of John Green, and that one has been out for a while. So yeah. Have you read any John Green?
I haven't, no. Mm-mm.
Yeah. I like him. I think he was young adult, I think,
Hmm.
but yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway.
we're maybe on a book ban journey.
And books.
Banned books. But I mean, it is
Yeah.
interesting, and I do not at all like the idea of banned books. So I mean, I think being able to, and so Junot Díaz, I saw an interview with him talking about banned books, and my interpretation of what he was saying is that books are the one thing that will allow us to learn and grow, and how
Yeah.
important it is to read, and learn new things, and that they shouldn't be
Yeah.
banned. Yeah, that's my
No.
thought.
And in the course of history, when has banned books been a good thing? And the people banning
Right.
them been on the right side of history? I don't think ever,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think it's,
Yeah.
maybe just having more conversations about books, adding in more supports, those kinds of things. But I
Yeah.
also I was curious. So the author who has the most amount of bad books is actually Stephen King, which is really interesting. So I
Oh,
don't know.
that is interesting.
Yeah,
Well, he writes about some, freaky stuff. So
he does.
you're a Stephen King fan, aren't you? Or no?
I am. I do love
Yeah.
Stephen King. So I have to look up which ones specifically were banned. But
Yeah. I haven't read many of his books. I think I got freaked out by something like when I tried to read it a long time ago. But the one book I do remember reading was Needful Things. So
yes, yeah, yeah, they're all good. But yeah,
yeah.
I love scary things.
Yeah. Yeah. He's pretty intense.
Yeah, so I kept
Yeah.
asking you because I finished the book earlier in the week. So I kept asking you, did you finish it yet? Did you finish it yet? 'Cause I just wanted to know what your thoughts were. And so if you are at this point with us and you did not read the book and you want to read it, now is the time to leave. I'm not going to try not to have any spoilers, but just in case. So please go if you don't want spoilers. But the ending, and I won't say what it is, but I was completely shocked by. I started getting a feeling like a little bit before, like, wonder if it's gonna go this way.
Mm,
But I did
mm-hmm,
not at all think that throughout the whole book, and it's
mm-hmm.
heartbreaking. But
It really is.
it is, yeah. And I normally that doesn't happen to me. I think I'm pretty good at knowing where something is going to go. So when I'm completely surprised and shocked at the end of the book is yeah, it's rare. So
Yeah. And that theme that we talked about his love obsession. I mean, yeah, that
yes.
really did. I mean, that was solid all the way until the end. So that was, and you know, well, I guess sort of a spoiler, but I mean, obviously the brief and wondrous life, so that he doesn't live long. But and there's suicide talk. That's kind of like, oh well, you know, that's what's going to happen. And then after I read it, I'm like, oh my god. But you think of things like suicide by cop or things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so that came to my mind
Yeah.
as the ending. Like what? Like I think he kind of knew what was going to be the
Yes,
outcome.
I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it was a hard read, and the ending was really like, oh, like
Yes. Mm-hmm.
because there was a part where you're like, oh great, he's going to go back,
Yes.
he's going to
I was
go.
just gonna say that. It was looking up for a bit there.
It
What
was.
which is so I think important just to recognize in mental health
Mm-hmm,
too, and a lot
mm-hmm,
of times, even especially with suicide, like sometimes people will be in a really, really good place and you think like everything is great. So yeah,
mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of tough. So
yes. Yes. But I would still recommend it, just know going into it that yeah, it's very
yeah.
good, very beautiful, but very sad. So
Yeah. And if you know, if you are in a family that has, a history of trauma, or if you feel like there's a curse or, intergenerational trauma that you're experiencing, I think this really does give it voice. And I think it's worth the read. And, I think it is important to have your supports, and we will put up on, underneath the podcast, resources like the suicide line and, text line and things. So I think, having help and having resources available. Also, if the podcast or the book, if you read it, if that brings anything up in you and you start to feel, dysregulated, or that there's stuff that you haven't processed, reach out to a professional and talk about it.
Absolutely. Yes.
There's lots of ways to find therapists in your area. You can go on Psychology Today. You can just Google therapists in my area or a trauma therapist in my area, and you can just a list will be provided for you. So
yes, and 988 is always a great number to call if you need resources too.
Yeah. And that's a super easy number. And that's still in action, right? I mean, it's still active, 988. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, hopefully,
Yeah, I also just saw that someone actually wrote a playwright and turned it into a play. So I was just looking up where it is. So it's the Goodman Theater, which I think is in Chicago.
Oh.
Right? Pretty sure Chicago. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, they turned it into a play, and it got really good reviews that they actually, I think it was February to the end of March, and they actually extended it that they're going to keep going through like April. So I would love to be able to go see it, but I guess, Chicago's a bit far for us.
Yeah. I would go if it goes to New York. We should have a road trip.
Oh my gosh, yes, because I just feel like I'm like, how amazing would that be? And I would love to see what they do with it. But, so someone did turn it into a play. If you want to check that out. But,
yeah. So this is a really good book. It talks about really difficult topics, but it could also be an invitation for you to, look at some of your own story that maybe you haven't wanted to. So yeah. So I gave it on Goodreads, 5 out of 5. I thought it was really good. So I know ours are 10 out of 10. So I probably would give it, a 9 or 10. Yeah.
Me too. Definitely. I would say 10 for sure.
Yeah.
Just because it takes a lot for me to feel very, especially reading a book, to be surprised by the ending. And to be not want to put it down.
Yeah. And this is one that if any of our listeners like to listen to books, I'm not saying you won't get the same, but I would try both. I would try reading it and listening, because for me, it just hit different. I don't know why.
Me too. We talked about that. Yeah, I'm not sure why either, but it definitely did. And I made sure I was still doing a combination of reading and listening, but I made sure for it was part 3. When things were getting really kind of crazy, I was like, I can't listen to this. I need to read it. So
that's where I got to, last night. And I'm wondering why my sleep is so disrupted. I was reading it before I go to bed or listening. So
that's probably why you were maybe having some interesting dreams. About curses.
It definitely wasn't good because I was not sleeping very well, but it's definitely a book worth reading. I think it will open up things. Even if you don't have intergenerational trauma, you probably know someone who was affected by something. I also think it just gives a lens on how, as some of our other books too, but I think this one is more relatable. It's more current. But gives a lens to people suffering.
Agreed. Yes. So thanks for listening. We have to pick what book we're going to do next, but I think, let us know, please, if you want us still to, if you prefer doing more therapy, self-help books, if you want us to read more banned books. I think we're definitely going to do that, at least a couple. I have a few in mind. Especially ones that have mental health themes for sure. So, or if you have any ideas, any books you've read recently and you want us to read, let us know.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
See you guys later. Bye.
Bye.